True change only happens when you amplify and magnify it through other people. If you're gonna work 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, you might as well work to value, attract that value. You might as well share some of that value with your team for helping you go get it. Would you agree? Let's look at the actual stats from idea to success. Okay, so let's look at this. There's right now 31.5 million small to mid-sized businesses. Now in your book, under the 31.5 million, where it says the stats above your book, I want you to write $12 trillion at the top of your book. Under your $12 trillion or next to it, I want you to write 67% of the US workforce. Next to 67% of the US workforce, I want you to write another statistic, which is 45% of the GDP, our total economy. And then next to that, I want you to write this number, because this is the number that caused me to decide that I was going to focus on a $12 trillion space that employed 67% of the workforce, that created 45% of the GDP, and that number is 8%. Just write 8% down. Anybody know what that 8% represents? That 8% represents the value all those businesses have been able to attain on the stock market, which means a majority of you, no matter how much you bust your ass, will never get the advantage of high multiples and high valuations for your company. And this is where Wall Street comes in. They're like a huge trawler out in the middle of the ocean. You know, I used to go salmon fishing every year with my buddy in Alaska. And we'd be sitting in the back of the boat for hours trying to catch our salmon. And then all of a sudden we'd look and these huge trawlers would come by, reeling in these nets with millions of salmon, throwing ones that if we caught them, we'd be thrilled, throwing them back in the ocean because they were too small. And I looked at my buddy one day and I said, this is definitely the definition of working harder and not smarter. Would you agree? What you guys represent to private equity and to investment is you represent an ocean full of salmon, and they're a trawler that just comes through and scoops up the good ones and throws all the rest back. And I think there's an opportunity to significantly change that. Would you agree? I mean, think about it. If you're going to work 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, you might as well work to value, attract that value. You might as well share some of that value with your team for helping you go get it. Would you agree? And you might as well keep as much of that value in your business for your customers and for your employees and for you. If you could do that and build something of high value, wouldn't that be more exciting, yes or no? Yeah, so my last business, that's how I started it, was after my first business, being a consolidator backed by one of the top tier private equity groups in the world at 26, 27, raising money, being told no, and finally raising enough money that I bought 138 businesses and took it public at 29 years old on the American Stock Exchange, which, by the way, as a 2.4 GPA voted least likely to succeed, was quite a feat by 29 years old. And I thought I was on top of the world and I had it all figured out, and every glass ceiling I busted through it, and anybody that said it can't be done, I figured out a way it could be done, and I was going and going and going and going and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. I finally got the business where it was gonna make a bunch of money. I finally got the business where I was the only one in the world that could do what I did, and all of a sudden I get a phone call in May of 2002. I'm at the peak of my career, ready to dominate the rest of my life, looking at global expansion. Everyone's coming to me, everyone's offering me money, and my private equity group says, man, it's been a 5-year grind. Man, you have done amazing things. And not only can we get 100% of the money we invested back, we could get 100% on top of that money that we invested, and we could get an extra kicker of 15% for the duration that we're in, so we're selling your company. And I went from the highest point in my career in May of 2001 to the single lowest point ever as an adult by July of 2001, to out of a job by February of 2002. Now, we all know what happened in 2001. They just flushed my company out. And I went from being worth $10 million to starting over. And after a couple of years of being bitter and kicking the dog, I didn't have a dog, but if I had one, I might have kicked it. It probably would have bit me back. But the point is being bitter. Until one of my mentors grabbed me by the short hairs and said, dude, if you continue to be the guy you are today, I won't have anything to do with you anymore. Because the guy that I knew could bust through glass ceilings, make magic happen. The gap between that guy and this guy is you didn't learn what you did wrong. And had you have another opportunity to do it differently, how great could it be? Identify the gaps. Lean into your strengths, identify the gaps, and go build something where you don't have those gaps anymore. So I launched that business in 2005, and here was my concept. If I could help independent business owners grow and scale and dominate their market, If I could help independent business owners create a plan to where they could share the value of their business with their employees, if I could build a business supporting those business owners, and then I could share the value of my company with my employees, and so my customers could share the value with me, I could share the value with my employees, and my customers could share their value with their employees, we would have a closed system of everyone pulling, P-U-L-L-I-N-G, together. So it took me 8 tries to get through the SEC to get my exemption, and I pushed and pushed and pushed. I finally got it where I could share equity with people, and it was one of the first, some of the smart people I spent time around is like, you know, you built one of the first decentralized ownership structure before blockchain ever existed. And you got it approved by the SEC, which was no small feat. And I had tax issues, and I fought and fought and fought to get the structure done first. And the structure was centered around sharing equity with my customers, sharing equity with my employees, and not raising one penny and never giving up control of my company, but sharing the success with everybody. And I was told, just like I was told when I said I'm gonna go start my first company, it could never be done. But I pushed and I pushed and I pushed and I pushed and I learned and I learned and I learned and I pushed. In 2009, after 4 years of Inc. 500, Inc. 5000, 2 times Entrepreneur of the Year, the world went through a meltdown. And as the world was going through a meltdown, I was doubling in size over and over and over. In fact, it's kind of funny, if you would have met me in, say, 2012 or 2013, you would have met me with a business that was doing 30, 35 million in revenue, 160 employees. And I would have looked to you like I was pretty successful. And so some people ask, and I'll just jump into it, why did Natalie and I partner with Grant and Elena Cardone? So if you go take a point in time, 2010, 2016, or 13-ish, kind of take that time, Grant was going like this, and I was going like this. And if you would have met one of us, you would have said, oh, Dawson's an entrepreneur, he's got this big company, he's doing millions of dollars a year, blah, blah, boo, boo, boo. But what happened by 2019, Grant went like this, and of course it continues on, and I kind of just went like that. In fact, a funny stat, of 18 customers when I launched that business, in June of 2005 at the Phoenician Hotel, I had 18 clients there. When I sold and did the vote to sell the company in June of 16, of the 18, 16 were still in that room. 1 died and 1 sold. But I had another couple hundred in the room. And we sold that business to a public company in Denmark, and then we rolled out what I had built in the US into 8 countries, and we took that business in 3 years from $1 billion in value to 4.5. I took all that research I had built on industries and verticals and scaling and data and systems, theories, and all the things that could happen in the marketplace in that $12 trillion space. How accurate would we have been with some of these verticals? And they said about 60%. So I refreshed the content, and I had a new problem. I had no longer a job for the first time in my life. I wasn't certain what I was going to do with myself. And then a little bit of doubt crept in, like I had crushed it, killed it from all standpoints, all my peers, like you did it, you came back, you crushed it, you're the comeback kid, man, way to go. But I emotionally was at one of the lowest points again. And even worse than when they sold my company out from underneath me, because I had all this money, I had all this time, I've always been pushing, I've always been working, and now I used to live off 4 or 5 million of cash flow every month or every year, and now all of a sudden I've got $100 million in the bank, but I'm spending principal to maintain my life, and I realize one day I'm gonna run out of money, I'm not actually doing anything. I spent all this time, energy, effort, all this research, and all this shit I've done. I built this ecosystem, built this engine, built this technology, built these teams, and all of a sudden I asked myself the question, do you really have what it takes to try anything again? Well, fortunately, I was with my wife, who's half my age, and she'd been with me for 6, 7 years, and she'd built a lot of these programs and worked in 2 different companies with me. And she said, look, dude, I didn't get together with you for you to retire, become fat, and play golf every day. I got together with you because we had this vision of building something huge, something significant, something big. And if you're not gonna be committed to that, then I have to ask the question, am I doing the right thing? Sometimes you just need the right people in your life to give you a good, swift kick in the gut, to remind you of where you're at that moment. How many of you have those people in your life? Well, for some of you, this might be, by the time you experience this weekend and leave here, it may be that moment for you. That aha, or that wake-up moment, or that inspirational moment where you can find inside of you what it's gonna take for you to become what you're actually capable of becoming. And then for you to go out and change your life forever. But here's the beautiful thing about changing your life is you don't do it alone. True change only happens when you amplify and magnify it through other people.